So my name's Kristen Bonsall, and I am a security engineer at Eastern Bank. Eastern Bank is a large regional bank in the greater Boston area. And so I'm kind of responsible for their instant response and digital forensics function. I also help build out some of our custom detections. When we have a new vulnerability discovered or we're seeing some new threat emerging, we'll go in and my team will build out new detections, and then based on those detections, it'll kind of be a cycle. We'll start our response. So I graduated from UMass Amherst with a business degree back in 2018. So I've been in industry for about 3 years now. And I originally started in a very, an entry level data analytics role. And I kind of gradually became interested in security. So it took me a while to make that pivot. And that's what I'm here to talk about today, how I transitioned into cyber. So why cybersecurity? This is something that's been talked about a lot today. Information security is clearly a hot topic. And over the last 20 to 30 years, we've become so dependent on information and data and the internet. Every morning, the first thing I do is I check my phone. I put on my smartwatch that tracks my steps. Then I'll adjust, my smart thermostat. I'll check my emails, read the news while I drink my coffee and probably fit in some online shopping. And all of these actions results in companies aggregating data about me. So Google knows everything about me. They know who I am, where I live, who my friends are. And since people are using these technologies and creating this data, bad people are finding ways to abuse these technologies naturally. So the growing need for skilled security professionals is undeniable, and it's increasing exponentially. And plus, it's a fun and exciting field. And so I have a lot of people say to me, well, how'd you get into that? And this is really my story. So opportunities exist for all facets of the security world right now, ranging from compliance to forensics to education. And in the last 3 years, I transitioned from, like I mentioned, an entry-level data analytics role to an instant response specialist position where I really found my career passion. So I'd like to share a few of my suggestions for breaking into the security industry. Number 1, create your own path. Take charge of your destiny. 2, work hard and distinguish yourself from others. 3, pay your dues and don't be afraid of the grunt work. 4, show enthusiasm. 5, don't take no for an answer. Just always keep moving forward. And, going to college, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life, like many young adults. And like many of the other presenters here, I don't think I really saw a presentation from a presenter who said, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with cybersecurity. A lot of people have unconventional paths to get here, and that's okay. So when I was in college, I decided to pursue a bachelor's of business administration at UMass, focusing on information systems since I did like computers. And I completed my degree and secured my first job, the entry-level data analytics role. I worked at a Big 4 accounting firm, and I focused on fraud investigations. So that team worked on all different kinds of fraud investigations, ranging from asset misappropriation, maybe insider trading, also fraud compliance. That's really big in the healthcare sector, pharmaceutical companies. So it was very broad fraud. And so soon I found out that there was a small group focusing on cyber investigations, doing digital forensics and incident response. And this sounded way more interesting than the SQL queries I had been previously doing. So I decided I wanted to concentrate on digital forensics. So this brings me to my suggestion number 1, which was create your own path. This is my path and how I've kind of gotten to the industry. I began reaching out to the digital forensics managers and figuring out what I needed to do to join their team. I didn't have a relevant degree in computer science or cybersecurity. I didn't have any direct experience. I had no certifications. So, of course, the managers were eager to have me on their team. Just kidding. It was quickly made clear to me that it wasn't going to be an easy ride joining their team. So I wanted to pursue a cyber-related certification to get on the right track. But before my company paid for a cert, they encouraged me to utilize free internal training resources. And so the firm offered web-based learnings on a wide variety of topics, including cybersecurity. So I took it upon myself to complete every single web-based learning on security, at least 30 different trainings online. And over the next 6-month period or so, I probably spent about 30 minutes a day in addition to my 40+ hour work week working on these trainings. I also passed the Certified Information Systems Auditor, or CISA, exam, which is kind of a generic IT audit certification, but it also goes over some information security topics. So I did that exam as self-study to not use any firm resources. And any part of the day where I had downtime or extra cycles, I would use that time for cyber-related studying. So once these trainings were complete and I had my CISA, I went back to my managers and said, hey, I completed every single internal training on security. Can I attend SANS training now and to pursue an incident response certification? And eventually this got approved, which brings me to point number 2, which is work hard and distinguish yourself from others. Of the other new hires like myself, many of them were interested in the cyber investigations team and were also, trying to get on those projects. But because I had done all of these trainings, because I was the squeaky wheel in front of the managers, keeping them up to date with my progress, saying, hey, I'm still here, I'm still working on these trainings, keep me in mind. I was the one who got approved to do one of the SANS training courses. So incident response and digital forensics is the path I chose. But when you say, I want to do cybersecurity, that statement is actually pretty broad. So there's many different paths in cybersecurity, many of which we've talked about today. And this slide shows some of the different paths. You can see down here, this was my path under the security operations node. I'm down under incident response and forensics. But there's lots of different routes you can go. And if you know specifically what you want to do in security, you can concentrate your learning in that area. Otherwise, you can start really broad. So to get started in security, there's a combination of soft skills that I would say are applicable and would be very useful, and hard skills as well. So for soft skills, I'd say, having clear communication, being able to understand what's happening for a security incident and convey that to a management team is very useful. Creative problem solving, being able to work through, whatever security incident or threat or vulnerability you're looking at, ask the right questions, implement the right tools, and be able to kind of work backwards to get to the answer. Attention to detail. So especially for people who, like me, are in incident response, digital forensics, you might be looking through really large log files, and you really need to be able to go through them, with a fine-tooth comb, looking for, details that if you miss them, you might, miss that the key to solving the case. So then there's also your hard skills. Information management. So I actually had an information systems degree, which proved to be kind of useful, but you don't really need a degree to learn how companies, manage their information. Computer science basics. So to get started in cybersecurity, you should have knowledge level above that of a normal end user. What I mean by this is if I asked you to go find your IP address, you should be able to run ipconfig and get your IP address. Or if I asked you to ping google.com, you should know what this means and how to do this. I wouldn't have to tell you, okay, click start, open up command prompts, type in ping. You should be able to, kind of work through it on your own. You should be able to, reset your Windows password, things like that. Or alternatively, you'd have the wherewithal to quickly Google how to do these things, with minimal guidance, kind of be able to work through it on your own. And Google's always your friend. I Google things all the time, and this would be knowledge, like no more knowledge than what your average help desk technician would have. I think would set you up perfectly to take your first certification, get on the right track for cyber. And then down the road, in cyber, most cyber professionals specialize in a subset. So like I mentioned, I specialized in incident response, but there's lots of different routes you can take. And if you don't know what you want to specialize in, you start broad and kind of try everything. And then you'll find an area where you're really interested and kind of drill down and focus that specialized knowledge that you can bring to a team and be an asset, and say, have expertise in an area. So some of you might be thinking, I don't necessarily have those technical skills, or I don't know how to get to the starting point where I'm ready to take my first certification course. And that's okay. I had limited command line knowledge when I started in industry. And so you can start looking things up online, like how do I learn Windows command line, or how do I learn Windows PowerShell? And this will set you up for entry-level certifications like A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus. You can even look up how do computers work, and it's just a really good starting point to get you get that technical mindset and start asking questions and broadening your knowledge, which will ultimately help you be a better technology professional. And there's lots of great tutorials on IT on Code Academy or Udemy. One of my favorite sites for cybersecurity specific training is Cybrary. And there's a pro version on this site where you can actually pay to get some specialized training, or there's tons of free trainings. You can see some of them here: information security fundamentals, become a SOC analyst, become a network engineer. And these are trainings that you can go in and learn hands-on skills that you can apply tomorrow. They're really good, and there's tons of different options. So I would highly recommend getting on Cybrary, especially because most of it's free. And you should also get comfortable reading cybersecurity news. That's one of the first things I do on my job every day is I read cybersecurity news, because you'll find out about recent breaches that might be relevant to your organization, or you'll read about new vulnerabilities that are released. And so this is something you should get used to now. And there's some great places to get started here: CSO Online, Security Magazine, Dark Reading, the Hacker News, Creds on Security is great, or Security Weekly. There's lots of different news outlets, and as you start reading more security news, you'll become increasingly familiar with the terminology that's used in industry. It's also very useful to get familiar with the Windows operating system. So if you're familiar with what's normal on a Windows operating system, you'll notice when something is abnormal, or that's the idea. You can begin to look for that anomalous activity, which is ultimately what cybersecurity is all about. And you can do this by looking at Windows event logs, or even Windows Defender. If you get a Windows Defender pop-up that says, oh, there's a malicious file found on your computer, that's a big indicator that something anomalous is going on. Or you can download Malwarebytes. It's a free malware detection program. You can download the executable today for free and run it on your computer and see if it finds any malicious files. Maybe you downloaded a potentially unwanted program, a PUP, when you downloaded FileZilla. That's an easy way to get started and start looking for those anomalies. One way that I furthered my Windows knowledge is by volunteering at my local senior centers, teaching the elderly how to use basic Windows applications and helping them troubleshoot technology problems. And it's actually a lot easier to learn when you're answering questions from others, since you really need to have that deep understanding of why something's happening to give a good explanation. So, there's no right path of how you can learn these things. You can be really creative with it. And the same can be said for Linux or Mac operating systems. If you're a big fan of Linux, get familiar with the logs and Bash. And there's no right way to learn these things. Just get creative with how you can incorporate computers more in your daily life. Maybe you're interested in home automation and start Googling how to automate new aspects of your daily routine. All learning is good learning, and it's just get creative, just get started, start using computers more, and that'll get you to a really good starting place. So I did my informal trainings, and then I eventually got approved to go to SANS training. And for those of you guys who don't know, SANS Institute offers some of the best in industry training courses and certification prep. I'd highly recommend taking a SANS course if you get the chance. I'd also recommend having your company sponsor you to attend a SANS course, since they are very pricey. But many corporations will pay for you to attend these because the knowledge you get there is so valuable. It's so relevant to what you're doing, and you can apply it just the next day on the, when you are on the job. And I took the Advanced Incident Response and Threat Hunting class, which prepares you to take the GX Certified Forensic Analyst GCFA exam. And if you're looking to specialize in incident response, I'd highly recommend this certification. That's not for the faint of heart. It was a very difficult class. It was kind of like shell shock for me, but you work your way through it. And it was a tough course. They pack it all into a week, but then you have, I believe, 4 months or so to study for the certification. So it gives you some time to kind of digest all of that information that you took in. And so I found this map on Reddit, actually, a few months ago when I was trying to plan out my next certification. And it gives you an overview of all the different certifications that are available in information security based on your career interests and also your level. So as you can see down here, there's Security Plus, the entry level certifications. You got A+, Network Plus, depending on what area of security you're trying to go into. And then as you progress, you get to a novice level, you're going to take some of those, the harder certifications, maybe the GSEC, that's another SANS course. And then, you can see I took the course I was talking about that I took is the GCFA. So it's a more specialized incident handling course. But you can kind of map out as I, mature, as I grow my cyber knowledge and figure out where I want to specialize, what trainings do I want to take. And I recently took and passed my CISSP, which is also a general, it's a management security exam, which I'm sure you guys probably heard about today. And that's another great area to just learn about cybersecurity as a whole. I took it kind of later on, but I would even recommend if you're bold and you want to try, it gives you a really good intro to a lot of different cybersecurity topics. So once I completed my GCFA, I was welcomed onto the cyber investigation incident response team at my firm. Since I had this specialized knowledge, I was an asset to the team. And this was back in the pre-COVID days when we would actually travel to client sites if they had a cyber incident, which brings me to point number 3, which is pay your dues and don't be afraid of the grunt work. Being an incident response, you can't really predict when there's going to be a cyber incident. And there would occasionally be long hours and late nights working on a response project. I can remember one day I was at work and I got the message that there was a ransomware incident for a construction company, one of our clients in Utah, and they needed me to get on a flight to Salt Lake City that evening after working a full day, and that I would need to be there for a few days. We were working around the clock on this project to decrypt machines and get our client back up and running. And I was on the night shift, so I believe I was working 1 p.m. to 1 a.m. And I had packed for a few days because they told us it was only going to be like a, few day long project, 3 or 4 days. But it actually took a couple of weeks to finish this project. We worked through the weekends, long hours, and so I had to go buy extra clothes for Utah because I only packed for a few days. But it was a lot of work. It was a great learning experience, and I made a name for myself as someone the team could depend on after that project. So my advice is, don't be afraid of the grunt work. Raise your hand for these types of projects. They're going to need people to fill these projects where some people might not be excited to work the night shift, or they might not want to fly out, or work those odd hours. I guess we don't fly out places anymore, but hopefully we'll get back to it. I'd say, for anyone can do this, start your day early or stay late. Try to stay longer than your manager. Always be there if they need you. Raise your hand, volunteer, and then expect longer odd hours in cyber. Like I said, especially in incident response, you can't really predict when there's going to be a security incident. You can't predict when new vulnerabilities are going to be announced or disclosed. And it's an industry where you might have to work different odd hours, and that's okay unless you're working in education or something. I can't really predict, an education emergency, but you never know. I would also say, I'd say yes to growth opportunities. generally, when you're working like at a consulting firm, the growth opportunity is the project that nobody really wants to be on. And this is a really good opportunity for you to make a name for yourself, because a lot of people shy away from these projects. If you jump on and say, yes, I'll do it, I'll take on this growth opportunity, you're going to stand out to the managers as someone they can depend on. You're going to make a name for yourself, and then they're going to pick you for those kind of more glamorous projects that might come down the path next time. And also, I wanted to point out, don't be afraid to start with an analyst or a help desk role. A lot of those positions will give you the knowledge and the expertise to move up in the in security, and help you make your name known and get your foot in the door for a lot of companies. It might not be the end-all position, but it will give you that opening to get in. And I would also say show enthusiasm. That's point number 4. You want to work with people that are pleasant people. This is just at any job. You always want to work with happy people who are pleasant to work with, be around. My boss is super pleasant. He's so nice. And just every day, I don't mind logging on and chatting with him. He's just such a happy-go-lucky person. And that's the kind of person you really want to work with. So, take the advice of these girls saying, cybersecurity rocks. I hope we get to work late on this tonight. If you're enthusiastic and you're showing that you're excited to be there, you want to be on the team, you're really ready to go, they're going to put you on the team before somebody who's kind of got a negative attitude. And point number 5, don't take no for an answer. When I was trying to get onto the incident response team, they didn't want to put me on the team. They had already done their hiring. They didn't really need anybody else. They weren't incentivized to teach me everything that I needed to know. But because I kept raising my hand, I kept being in front of them, working on different certifications, I got to the point where I knew enough to be lethal, and I actually could contribute to the team, and I would help on those projects that not everyone wanted to be on. And, I kind of inserted myself onto the team, whether they like it or not. So I would say, don't take no for an answer. Keep putting yourself out there. And if you don't get the first job you apply for, keep applying for different other jobs, because eventually you only need one, and it's going to come down the path eventually, especially with the state of our industry right now. There's tons of opportunities, and you just need to find the right fit. So that's my path. I started at my entry-level position. I did some training, eventually got to my GCFA, and I joined that incident response team. And then, so once I was on the incident response team, then I went and talked to some recruiters and try to figure out, okay, if I want to progress my cybersecurity career more, I want to be, a better candidate moving forward, just know more about the industry. What should I do to get to the next level? And so the recruiters and industry professionals, just friends I had met along the way, they said to me, you don't really have much networking experience, and I think that's an area where you could grow your knowledge. They also said you haven't used different security tools, like Splunk especially is used as like the security event incident management platform. And so they said you could really grow your Splunk knowledge. So I then went out and got my GNFA, which is the Network Forensic Analyst. I also got my Splunk Certified Power User certification. And then I was ready to kind of go on to my next career option. I wanted to get a broader look into cybersecurity rather than be completely incident response focused. So then I got my current job as a security engineer at Eastern Bank, and I'm kind of the IR specialist on the team. So I still work on those IR projects, but then in my free time, I get to learn more about security, get that broader look, build out custom detections, work on other security engineering initiatives. And so it's been a really awesome learning experience for me. And I just passed my CISSP exam, as I mentioned, it's a management certification. So this is kind of gives you a whole broader look at information security. And I'd say really my end goal is to a management position eventually. And so I'm kind of trying to look, now that I finished my CISSP, what's my next goal? What's my next certification? I'll probably use that chart that I shared to kind of figure out, I think it's always good to keep moving forward, keep bettering yourself, because ultimately information security, the field's ever evolving. And if you stop learning, you're going to have a pretty poor information security department. So you got to keep moving forward. And with that, I will turn it over for any questions. I haven't really looked at the chat yet. And this is my dog, Watson, who's actually been very good downstairs, not barking. So I'd like to say thank you to him. He's my child. So let's see if we have any questions. Yes, I did say I did my Splunk certification. So there's different level. The Splunk fundamentals 1 and 2 are free, and you can take those. I know at least 1 is free. I think 2 it's pretty cheap. And then you can sit for your Splunk certifications, and it's a tool that many organizations use. And I would highly recommend that people get exposure to Splunk or any really security tools. If you're going to be working with firewalls, maybe look at Checkpoint or Palo Alto. If you're going to be working, with networking, you can kind of maybe use like OpenDNS. You can use, there's lots of tools. Go out there and explore where you want to concentrate. Yeah, thank you. All right, and I can share my slide deck as well on the Slack channel. So if you guys are interested in reviewing anything using the chart I shared or visiting any of those websites, I'll share it out. Someone coming from the privacy side. I think you're positioned perfectly to make that transition into information security. I think, like I mentioned, start getting familiar with some of the technical tools that you can use. So if you're not familiar with command line and PowerShell, that's a good spot to get started. And I think I'd say figure out where you want to land in cyber, because the certifications that you take will be dictated by what your ultimate end goal is. So use the chart if you want to end up in IR. I can tell you all the certifications you need for that. But I'd say try to talk to somebody who is in your ultimate end position and ask them what they've done to get there. I talked to a lot of different industry resources when I was trying to figure out what I needed to do to get where I am. And so definitely find someone who is in a role that you'd like and ask them what they did. Yes, I will share all the resources, and I'll put the slide deck in the Slack channel. And thank you on the congratulations of the CISSP. I appreciate it. Any questions? I'll be here for a few more minutes, so feel free to put them in the chat. Did I ever create my home environment? And if you mean like by home automation kind of thing? I personally am very much into home automation, so I've automated everything in my house, which was a good learning opportunity to learn more about technology and how to connect things. Do you have to know programming to progress forward? No, I am not a programmer. I took a Java class in college. It was not my thing. And so I think it's good to have an understanding of how programming works. I'd say scripting languages are more relevant. So I use command line and PowerShell every day on my job. I did not know that I didn't know command line or PowerShell when I was starting out. And I kind of got a basic level knowledge for those. And then I continue to develop that knowledge on my job. So my boss knows it well. He'll share his knowledge with me. And I just, Google is my friend. The more I Google how to do things, the more I retain. And so I'd say if you're going to get started with something, I'd advise command line and PowerShell. Do I have my own home virtual environment? I do have. I've been tinkering with the cloud, which is a broad term, but if you go to like aws.amazon.com, you can create your own cloud and start using those tools. I think like app security, cloud app security is kind of direction that a lot of teams are moving. And so that's one area where I've kind of mapped out that I want to broaden my knowledge moving forward. So yes, I am going to upload this to Slack. I think they're inviting everybody to Slack. If you didn't get the invite already, they're going to be sending it to your email. But once I share it, I'm going to share it in the, I believe, hashtag general group. So that will be up there shortly. Did I miss anything? So definitely no to programming. If you don't know programming, no worries. You know, if you really need to know any programming, wish you don't. I'd say like also SQL is relevant sometimes, but I don't really use it at all in my current job. And there's certain tools that you'll use based on what your specialization is in security and what your company uses. Every company has different like firewalls and proxies, and so those are the types of things that you can learn on the job once you get that job. And if anyone wants to connect with me directly on LinkedIn, or you can send me a direct message, I'm happy to answer any other questions that you might want to post in the chat. I'll be around all day. What strategies did I use for certifications? So like for the CISSP, for example, a lot of people will say that's the kind of exam where you need to study for 3 to 4 months, study a little bit every day. I am more of a crammer personally, so I might study more for like 2 months rather than 4 months, and I'll just spend a little bit more time every day because I'm not sure that I'm going to retain information as long. So I, for a lot of certifications, I've done boot camps, mostly because my company will pay for them. But Cybrary, the website I mentioned earlier, that they have a lot of resources for taking all types of certifications, and they're free. So you can sign up for those like boot camp style classes, and that will give you some idea of like how to start studying. You can also, I like flashcards. There's a lot of flashcard decks that are already out there. I'm forgetting like that site that's called, but if you just Google like CISSP flashcard deck, you can pull that up and use ones that people have already created, so you don't need to reinvent the wheel. And I'm a big, like, if you see my bookshelf, I have all of the CISSP books. I probably have 4 different books, and I read all of them. So yes, Quizlet, thank you. Drawing a blank there. Yeah, so Quizlet for the flashcards. Thank you. All right, you guys, thank you very much. Again, if you want to send me a direct message, feel free to do so. I'm happy to answer any questions, give you any specific guidance, especially on incident response, digital forensics, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I really enjoyed this, so thank you guys.